Modern worship often centers around quiet moments, a small piece of bread, a sip of juice in a sterile room. But the roots of this practice are loud, visceral, and steeped in blood on a burning ancient altar. The biblical narrative establishes a severe baseline. Human moral failure, or sin, creates a lethal separation from a perfect God. Managing that gap and keeping the community alive required an incredibly rigorous physical system. This diagram maps out the ancient Israelite calendar. It is a highly engineered system of 7 annual feasts, designed specifically to address this separation. This flowchart breaks the calendar into 2 critical seasons. We see Passover anchoring the spring holidays, and the Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippur, anchoring the fall. For centuries, these 2 events were the primary mechanisms for national survival. Navigating these 2 massive festivals required 3 highly specific, rather strange animal roles. The system demanded a lamb, a sacrificed dote, and a living, exiled scapegoat known as Azazel. Why would an ancient religion construct 3 completely distinct mechanical roles just to deal with human guilt? To understand how this engine actually functioned, we have to look at the parts individually. The origin of this system goes back to Egypt. The Israelites were trapped in slavery under Pharaoh, leading God to strike the land with a series of severe plagues. Looking at this visual catalog of the 10 plagues, the sequence culminates here at the final panel, the death of the firstborn. An angel of death was sent to pass through the entire country. Surviving this impending execution required following a strict shielding rule. Each Israelite family had to select a male lamb, exactly 1 year old and without any physical defects, and sacrifice it. But the sacrifice alone was insufficient. They mechanically applied the lamb's blood, painting it onto the wooden doorposts and lintels of their homes. This physical mark signaled the angel to pass over that specific house. Inside those marked houses, the families were required to eat the meat of that sacrifice. It had to be roasted directly over a fire and consumed in absolute haste, with their shoes on and walking sticks in hand. They also ate mandatory side dishes. The unleavened bread, or matzah, and bitter herbs served as a physical memory of their hurried escape and the harsh reality of the slavery they were leaving behind. The Paschal lamb operated strictly as a mechanism for immediate physical survival and escape. It shielded them from the 10th plague, but did not address the deeper long-term problem of their accumulated moral failures. 6 months later, the calendar shifts to the fall season and the Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippur. Here, the goal moves entirely away from physical escape. The focus is exclusively on cleansing the nation's sins. This cleansing process required 2 animals working in tandem. The first half of the mechanism utilizes what the text calls God's goat, an animal specifically designated to be sacrificed on the altar. The function of God's goat is compensatory. Its blood is shed and sprinkled by the high priest to legally pay the moral debt the Israelites had racked up over the previous year. Then comes the second, much stranger half of the mechanism, the scapegoat. In Hebrew, this animal is called Azazel, and unlike the first goat, this one is intentionally kept alive. During the ritual, the high priest places both hands on Azazel's head. In doing so, he symbolically transfers the guilt and sins of the entire nation directly onto this living animal. Once the transfer is complete, Azazel is driven out of the camp and deep into the barren wilderness. It mechanically carries the physical weight of that guilt far away from the community. For centuries, the Israelites ran this exact loop. They warded off physical death in the spring with the lamb, and they paid for and carried away their sin in the fall with the 2 goats. It was an annual maintenance cycle, waiting for a permanent solution. Fast forward to the 1st century, during the event known as the Last Supper. Jesus and his disciples sit down in Jerusalem to participate in a traditional Passover Seder meal, eating the same unleavened bread and drinking the dark wine. But midway through, Jesus breaks the ancient script. He holds up the unleavened bread and the wine and declares that they now represent his own broken body and shed blood, establishing a new spiritual covenant. In doing this, he steps into the first role. Jesus acts as the ultimate Paschal lamb, physically sacrificed on a cross at the exact historical time the Passover festival is taking place. This new lamb mechanism operates on a spiritual scale, shielding the believer from eternal death. He also steps into the second role. He acts as the sacrificed goat of atonement, shedding his blood to permanently pay the moral debt of humanity, eliminating the need for an annual altar sacrifice. Finally, he fulfills the third role. Just like the exiled scapegoat Azazel, Jesus is taken completely outside the city walls of Jerusalem to die, physically carrying the sins of the world away from the camp. In his first letter to the Corinthians, the Apostle Paul identifies the completion of this cycle, stating, "Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed for us." These ancient bloody rituals functioned as a precise theological blueprint. For believers, this final sacrifice provides immediate atonement and permanently ends the rigorous cycle of the lamb, the goat, and the wilderness.